Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peter! Boom, 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 review stuff. And welcome back for another review of a television show. And today I'm going to be reviewing the show The Watcher on Netflix. And I started this new series over here where I am reviewing television shows and movies because I am obsessed with television shows and movies. In fact, this year alone so far, I have binge watched 59 television shows. I may go back and actually do videos commenting on some of the shows that I've watched, because I think that some of the shows that I've watched so far this year, like Candy and Under the Banner of Heaven, I think deserve attention for a video. But let me just kind of give you a list of all of the shows that I've watched this year, and if there are any that stand out to you guys, let me know if you would like me to do a commentary video on it. So, I've watched Bridgerton, From, The Lincoln Lawyer, Candy, The Thing About Pam, The Sinner, Season 1, Under the Banner of Heaven, Euphoria, Life and Beth, Severance, Heartstopper, Shining Girls, Pieces of Her, Night Sky, The Deep End, Stranger Things, Legendary, The Staircase, Keeper of the Ashes, Keep Sweet, Pray and Obey, The Perfect Mother, First Kill, The Unsolved Murder of Beverly Lynn Smith, Yellow Jackets, Hacks, Victoria's Secret, Angels and Demons, that would be another good one for a video. The Murdoch Murders, The Old Man, Ken and Barbie Murders, The Most Hated Man on the Internet, RuPaul's Drag Race All-Stars Legends, The Ultimate Girls Trip, Season 2, Blackbird, Flowers in the Attic, The Origin, Uncoupled, Boo Bitch, I Just Killed My Dad, Loot, Trainwreck, Woodstock 99, Untold, The Girlfriend Who Didn't Exist, Pretty Little Liars, Original Sin, Echoes, Only Murders in the Building, La Brea, Season 1, I'm now watching Season 2, Love Victor, all of the seasons, Black Summer, Devil in Ohio, The Girl in the Picture, Sins of Our Mother, Canada's Drag Race, Real Housewives of Dubai, 5 Days at Memorial, American Horror Story Season 2, RuPaul's Drag Race Down Under Season 2, Dahmer, which I think is another one I need to cover over here, Real Housewives of Atlanta, Abducted in Plain Sight, Murder in the Bayou, and The Watcher. So those are all of the shows that I have watched this year. I can do reviews of any of those. I have also watched the first 2 episodes of the new season of Unsolved Mysteries on Netflix. I'm going to watch the 3rd episode that they've put out, and then I'm probably going to do a review of the first 3 episodes they've released over here, or released on Netflix. I also watched Luckiest Girl Alive, a movie on Netflix the other day. So I am going to, I think it's like trending top 10 movies on Netflix right now, so I'm probably going to be doing a review of that as well. And I'm just having so much fun over here, and so many of you watched my review that I did of Halloween Ends, and I really, really appreciate it. It was so fun for me to read the comments and see, you know, there were people that loved the movie, there were people that hated the movie, like me, there were people that were disappointed in it, you know, there were people that had, you know, suggestions. There were people that just found things that I had never seen in the movie, so it was really fun reading the comments. So anyway, let's get into The Watcher. All right, so this is how I found out about The Watcher. I had taken a little bit of a nap that night, and I woke up to text messages from my best friend, Tanya Jean, and my cousin Caroline, and they were both texting me saying, have you seen this new show that came out on Netflix, The Watcher? And it had this very ominous picture of a house in the background, and I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know that it was coming out or anything, right? So I looked it up, and it had 7 episodes, and I thought, well, 7 episodes is easily binge-worthy, right? And then I looked at the cast, and it was Naomi Watts, who I love, Jennifer Coolidge, who I absolutely adore, and Mia Farrow was in it, and there were, you know, several other people that I had seen in, like, smaller films, and I was like, this is a really fantastic cast, you know? And one of the things that I am loving about the kind of move to binge-worthy television is that we are seeing, you know, mainstream actors and actresses that are doing binge-worthy TV shows, and I just love that. I think it's fantastic, right? For me, it kind of started several years ago when I watched, I think it's called True Crime, I think it's called True Detective, and Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson were in the first season of it, and I have watched every season since, and I love that show, and I just thought it was so cool that you saw these mainstream actors, right, that they were in a television show, and I love that today, right? So anyway, and I will say, like, because I think we see a different side of some of these actors and actresses in these TV shows. Like, for example, in watching Candy with Jessica Biel was not anybody that was really on my radar as far as an actress. I thought she was pretty. I thought she was gorgeous. I had seen some things that she was in, and I thought she was a pretty good actress. When I saw Candy, I was like, she is through the roof, a phenomenal actress. And then when I turned around and I watched The Sinner season 1 that had been recommended to me because I was saying that I liked Candy, and I'm going to watch the other seasons as well because I know a 4th season just came out. But when I watched the first season, literally on the heels of watching Candy, it was like very similar role, but she played it completely differently, and I was like, this is so unbelievable, right? So anyway, I don't know. I think it's interesting when you see an actor or an actress in a movie where they're given an hour and a half to 2 hours to play a role versus 7 to 10 episodes in a show or several series, and I love that. So anyway, so I started watching The Watcher. I didn't expect to watch it as quickly as I did, so I started watching it, and the first night I got through 4.5 episodes. The next night I finished it. So let me tell you that when I started watching the show, and when I would say like episode 2 to 3, maybe 4, I would have given this show like an 8 to a 10. I thought it was so great. I was sitting outside watching it. I was kind of terrified sitting on the front porch. I was like hearing wind, like leaves blow in the wind down the street. It was very spooky. It was very Halloween. I thought it was a great show to release during Halloween season. And so I thought it was really, really scary. By the last episode, by the ending of the show, I have to say I probably would give overall the show with the ending included, maybe a 3.5 or a 4. I was very disappointed in the ending of the show. So let me tell you the premise to the show, okay? The premise is that this couple that lives in New York City, a couple with 2 kids, Naomi Watts is the wife, and the husband, I don't know him as well, hold on a second. His name is, hold on a second here, Bobby Cannavale, and he, no, wait, is that his name in the movie? Or no, yeah, and they play the Brannocks. And they buy this stunner house in the suburbs. I think it's Westfield, New Jersey. And the house address and everything is actually based on a true story of a couple that bought this house in 2014. And they were a couple that had 3 younger kids, all under the ages of 10. And Ryan Murphy was one of the producers of this show. So I thought, okay, this is going to be very similar to like a Ryan Murphy show. A lot of people were saying that it was very similar to Murder House. So I thought it was going to have those kind of vibes to it. Like right out of the gate, there's some jump scares. So I was really into the show. So I, like an idiot, went in and I read the articles about the comparisons to the show. And what I found was that they had taken this story and they had morphed it into this television show, but they had really changed a lot, which I was completely fine with. Like, I didn't have any issue with that. You know, unless it's like a true crime that they try to keep true crime, like for that, I pretty am hardcore about like, let's not have any kind of like creative talent, levity to it. You know, like I don't want to change the story. But if you're going to take a story and just say it's based on true facts or true events, like I'm completely fine with changing everything. But then if you're going to do that, like change it up so that it's so good and it's so rich that like it doesn't have to stick close to the story, because I felt like they tried to kind of stick too close to the story. So, oh, by the way, on all of my videos that I do about TV shows and movies, they will be completely full of spoilers, okay? All spoilers. So if you don't want to watch this, you're going to ruin it for you. So anyway, which I probably put in the description box below. So anyway, I started watching the show. So the show is about this couple that buys this house in Westfield, New Jersey, and it's this massive house. I don't even know, like, they said they paid $3 million for it or something like that. I mean, it was this massive house. I don't know why they needed this massive house, but that's beside the point, right? They wanted their kids to be able to play in the yard, is what they said. Well, their daughter was 16 at the time, so I think she was past the age of playing in the yard. But anyway, maybe, I don't know, Easter egg hunts she wants to do or something. I don't know, but she was kind of more into the boys, since that was kind of a whole situation in the show as well. But anyway, so they move into this house and they I start getting, well, immediately they see the neighbors, okay? And like I'm watching this, and Mia Farrow is one of the neighbors, and I'm like, oh, this is genius, okay? This is absolutely genius. As a lover of the movie Rosemary's Baby, I'm like, this is fantastic, right? Because Rosemary's Baby is about this woman and her husband that move into this apartment, and they're surrounded by all these creepy neighbors who we find out are part of this demonic cult at the end, right? And she basically has the devil's baby. And Ruth Gordon plays the very spooky neighbor, okay, in Rosemary's Baby. Well, Mia Farrow kind of, to some degree, plays Ruth Gordon's role in Rosemary's Baby in this movie. She's like in charge of the Historic Society and all this kind of stuff. There are these other two neighbors as well that kind of just sit in their yard and they watch everything happen. Okay. So then they start receiving these letters from somebody called the Watcher. And the Watcher is like watching their house and knows all this thing about them and the kids and all this kind of stuff. So then they're like trying to figure out who this person is. And the husband becomes kind of obsessed with all of this stuff. Enter this private investigator. Her name is Theodore. She was fantastic. I'm going to completely butcher her name. I don't know. It's Noma Dumaswini. And she has been in several things that I've seen her in before. She was fantastic. She was my favorite character in the entire show. And so she plays this private investigator. You guys, there's so much about this show that I could tell you that it was so interesting to me that I didn't have any follow through. Like, for example, at one point, he kind of gets into this argument with the neighbor. And so then she goes in and basically insinuates that she has cancer, okay? So then, that very same day, there's a murder-suicide that occurs with she and her husband, and they show their bodies, the very same day, shows their bodies being taken out of the house. It's this huge issue. People in the neighborhood go to the funeral. It's this huge deal, right? Okay. Then, and later in the show, they come back, and there's nothing sinister to it, and they're actually very nice people, except for her husband supposedly dies at the end of the show somehow, and then she's left alone, and she's part of this historic society kind of laughing, and there's nothing really sinister about her. And the story is that they were in Florida visiting their summer home or whatever, their Florida home, and that their son, who isn't okay, that like he got two elderly people from the assisted living program and like killed them and then made it look like it was them when it wasn't them at all. Well, when did you leave to go to Florida? First of all, there was this whole funeral that happened for everybody in town thinking it was them. Like, the whole story, it doesn't make any sense. It's so unreliable that it doesn't make any sense at all. And it's just for the storyline, but the story, it doesn't make any sense, right? Okay. Then there's this guy that comes in to their house and says that he's a building inspector and all this kind of stuff. And then you find out through the private investigator that he is supposedly the guy that lived there before in 1995, and he killed his whole family, but there's no record of it. And then it's an investigator made this up, and then you don't know if she made it up. I mean, it's all this unreliable stuff. And then even like Naomi Watts goes to private investigator with the letters and previous like Valentine's Day cards to see if her husband is writing the letters, which we find out later that he wrote one letter, and that was actually based on a true story, like of the true events. He wrote one letter, okay, to kind of scare the neighbors. But that's not the letter that she has to do comparison studies with. So she's doing comparison studies of the letters that they've received, and then this private investigator who goes to this guy that does writing samples. I'm so worn out with this show talking about it because it so makes no sense. And I'm sitting there watching it like this. I was so into it. Just to find out, okay, at the very end, that, like, I kept on thinking there has to be something about this, right? Because this one guy that they go to, I mean, I'm not even hitting the big points, right? This one guy that he talks to, he used to live there with his wife and their kid. And then the wife died. I think she died of like cancer or something like that. And then like he doesn't live there anymore, but he said there was like this satanic ritual that happened, and he had to put this blood in the basement. So I kept on thinking there was going to be some kind of satanic ritual, and it was going to be very much like Rosemary's Baby at the end. But that's not what happens, okay? And at this one point, Jennifer Coolidge comes in to the neighbor's house, and she basically is like, I get what I want this house, or I want you guys to fix it up or whatever, because I want this house next door. And what we find out is that Jennifer Coolidge, who, first of all, she goes out to dinner and lunch with her friend, the Naomi Watts character. Jennifer Coolidge plays this realtor that sells them the house, okay? Doesn't know anything about the history of the house, doesn't know anything about it, but wants them in this house, right? Okay, so then you think that it's her doing all this stuff to get them to sell the house for a lower price to this L corporation so that then she can buy it, which is kind of what happens, but not really, okay? So then she's like talking to her at lunch, and she's like, your husband's having an affair. Your husband's doing this. Your husband's doing that. But then it's like, it doesn't even make any sense, because based on the stuff that she says, you think it's like this group of people that are working together to take down this family. But it's not. There's like this USB that has like this camera in the bedroom that shows this girl come in there and all this kind of stuff. And then you find out that that's the teenage girl's boyfriend that did that. It had nothing to do with the realtor wanting the house. And saying that he's having an affair. Like, none of it lines up and makes any sense. At which point I received a phone call from my best friend that she said to me, if you had told me how this show ended, I would never have watched it to begin with, because it was so horrible, right? So the show ends, and they've sold the house, and they lost a lot of their money, but thankfully she is getting all of these gallery openings. And that was another thing. Like, you know, in the original, well, it was kind of like, I felt like it was kind of based on Rosemary's Baby, even though it wasn't. But like in Rosemary's Baby, he gets these acting parts because of like what he's doing with these demonic people. So she starts getting all these gallery openings. So I'm like, oh, this is even more that. Like, she's doing something with these demonic people, and so she's getting all these gallery openings. She sells clay pots. She sells clay pots, and she now makes enough that she doesn't need his $200,000-$300,000 a year salary anymore, because she's selling so many clay pots in galleries in New York City and Tribeca. It doesn't make any sense, okay? None of it makes any sense. So then the whole show ends with him sitting in front of the house, okay, watching this new family move in, which incidentally, oh, this Theodora woman, the private investigator, she dies of cancer. It's very sad, okay? And so then they go to their daughter's funeral, because she tells him this whole story about all this kind of stuff and what happened. And really what she's trying to do is just relieve his mind, because he's so ate up with trying to figure out what happened. So she tells him this whole story that is not true, okay? That she lived in the house and she did it, and she was the watcher all along. Well, you find out when they go to the funeral that that wasn't the case, that she wasn't the watcher, and that she had never lived in that house and whatever. So then you wonder, well, who's still the watcher? And we don't know. So then he goes and he's sitting in front of the house, and this new family moves in, right? And you kind of assume that he's the one now. Oh, there was a whole storyline about this teacher that started this whole thing about sending letters to houses. My friend Tanya and I were talking about last night. We're like, we should start this thing where we start sending people houses, talking about how much we love their houses, and just say, we love your house, it's cute, hey. But anyway, this whole teacher, like, he starts sending this whole activity lesson where through the last 30 years, where he has his students send these letters, like a love letter to a house, and that's how the whole thing kind of starts. So at the very end, he's now part of this preservation historical society with Mia Farrow and her brother, and then this guy that supposedly killed his whole family, but now he's going by a different name, and the neighbor next door, right? So when they introduce everybody, the neighbor that supposedly killed his whole family, he says something, and the teacher who's lived in this town the whole time says, how's your family? And so you're supposed to assume that he knows who this guy is, okay? But it doesn't make any sense, because there's no satanic anything to it, right? Then it flashes forward, and it's like, I don't know what this video is even supposed to be. I'm so worn out at this point, okay? So then it flashes forward to the husband, and he's sitting in front of the house talking to his wife on the phone, saying he's stuck in traffic. Then he peels away, because he's been going to the house apparently every day to check on the house, and now, is he the watcher? We don't know, okay? And she pulls up right behind him, and she's been watching him. So he's been watching the house, and she's been watching him, okay? And I'm sitting here watching the show, and I'm like, there was no concise ending. But here's the thing. if you are going to only steal part of the story and not the whole story, because the original story is boring because there is no ending. They have done investigations, private investigators, police. They still don't know who did it to this day. They only got one letter. The original family only got one letter. In The Watcher, I think they get like 10 letters or something, right? So if you're gonna change the story that much, change it and give us some wow ending. Change it and give us some, like, I don't know, some satanic cult standing in the basement and they were getting in through, like, because then there were tunnels in the basement. That was another thing. There were tunnels in the basement that showed that somebody was sleeping down in the basement, but you never find out who was sleeping down in the basement, right? So, like, I read all of these articles, first of all, that were describing the ending of, The Watcher. I went in and I read these articles, Newsweek and Cosmopolitan. You can go in and read the article. And what was very apparent to me about these two writers from Cosmopolitan and I think it was Cosmopolitan, but definitely Newsweek, was that they had never even watched the show because they said things that didn't even happen in the show, right? But there were like all of these things that happened and there was no ending to it. So the only thing that I can think is that there's gonna be another season to The Watcher. But they don't live in the house anymore, so how could that be possible? Or is it gonna be a whole other family, and we're not gonna have Naomi Watts and Mia Farrow and all these people? But it was, like, that would be the only way that I would say, okay, the show ended on a good note, because there's gonna be another season to this, and it's gonna be more conclusive. But there was no conclusion to this show whatsoever. I felt like I literally wasted 7 hours of my life. I really did. Like, and it was a good show, but I mean, like, if I'm gonna invest that much of it was a good show. I'm not going to contradict myself. The first 3 or 4 episodes were good, but then when it started getting into solving a mystery, because it is definitely a mystery thriller, when you get into, does it even say that on Netflix? I'm going to look and see. When you get into, it says, it doesn't define what it is. But when you get into this, and you're trying to solve this mystery thriller, and there is no solution to it, that's crap! That's crap. So I'm changing my rating out of 10. I'm not going to give it a 3. I'm going to give it a 2. But it was a good effort at the beginning. And I don't know why they didn't give us more of a conclusive ending. I don't understand. And all the things that explained the ending to me were like, well, based on the true story, they changed the true story. So that's not a good explanation. So anyway, that's my review. Let me know. I really want to know what you guys thought of The Watcher below. I love you guys, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.